Sharon Cameron.
Ruta!
Here we are in your gorgeous library at your home in Nashville.
Yes.
I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. I'm always happy when you're in my library.
Well, I'm happy to speak about your 8th book. I can't believe we're saying that.
How can it be?
8th book.
Yes.
ARTIFICE.
ARTIFICE.
Okay. I'm gonna go right in.
Do you want me to tell you?
Yes.
Okay.
What sparked the idea for ARTIFICE?
So ARTIFICE tells the story of Isa de Smet, who is a girl who has grown up in the glittering bohemian world of her parents' art gallery in Amsterdam. And this is a world that has been completely destroyed by the Nazi occupation. So Isa decides to fight back. She decides to fight back by funding a wing of the Dutch resistance that is smuggling Jewish babies. They are taking babies and smuggling them out of the city to safety. And she decides to fund them by selling an art forgery to Hitler, making the Nazis pay for the rescue of the very children they are trying to annihilate. And all she has to do to accomplish this is forge a Vermeer.
All she needs to learn.
That's all. Yes.
I know you love hidden history. How did you stumble on this particular topic?
Yeah, so this is based on 2 true stories, both of which fascinated me. The first is the story of Johann von Holst, who was a very unassuming teacher. He was the principal at a teaching college in Amsterdam, and his college just happened to be located across the street from the theater that had become a holding place for Jews, that was a deportation prison. And the children were all being held in a former daycare that was located directly next door to him. And these were children who were being deported to death camps. And so this was utterly unacceptable for him. And so he and 2 others decided to make this baby smuggling operation where they would put babies in laundry baskets and boxes and shopping bags and hand them over hedges and sneak them out of the city and find them homes. So he is credited with saving at least 600 Jewish babies and toddlers. He was an amazing man, and most people didn't even know what he did until much later in his life. He never told anyone. So he was made righteous among the nations in 1970. He was just an incredible person. He lived to be 107. I was fascinated by his story and how he was able to save so many children. Of course, the saddest part of his story is all the children they were not able to save. They couldn't save them all, and so they would have to go in and choose. And it was absolutely heartbreaking. But compare Johann von Holst to the second true story that ARTIFICE is based on, and that is the story of Han van Meegeren, who was one of the most notorious and clever art forgers of the 20th century. And Han van Meegeren was a Dutch artist who had been faking Vermeers and other Dutch masters for many years before the war. But when the Nazis occupied, he just went right on selling art. He just sold it to the Nazis, most notably to Hermann Göring. There was a von Meegeren Vermeer, fake Vermeer, hanging in Hermann Göring's office as the jewel of his art collection. So after the war, von Meegeren's name came up on a receipt that was found in Hermann Göring's office for selling this Vermeer. And so he was arrested as a collaborator. At that time in the Netherlands, collaborating with the enemy, selling Dutch heritage to the Nazis, was a death sentence. So he ended up in court in an enviable position of having to prove that he could not actually be a collaborator because he was actually an art forger. And nobody believed him. So they had him forge a Vermeer while in custody. And he demanded all the same circumstances, his special paint that was actually made with the same thing that Bakelite plastic is made of. That's how he was cracking paint to make it look like old Dutch masters. He requested alcohol and morphine and all the things he needed. And he faked a Vermeer. in custody. And in one of the most embarrassing moments of the art world, that Vermeer was authenticated by a leading expert. So then they believed him. And then, not unsurprisingly, he was convicted as an art forger, but he never served a bit of his sentence because he died just after, at the age of, I think 52. He died in 1947, so did not live long after the war at all. But, I think what interests me most about these two men, Johann von Holst and Han van Meegeren, is the way that the two of them, they look a lot alike. They both lived through the Nazi occupation. They lived in the same city. You could not look at these two men and see people that lived their lives more differently. Von Meegeren made during the war what would be equivalent to $28 million today. And I thought, what would have happened if Johann von Holst had Han van Meegeren's money? And that's really what sparked the idea for ARTIFICE, because I think the world would have been completely different.
Oh, I think so too. I'm going to ask two questions because
Yes.
I'm so fascinated with
Yes.
research. Two questions. First, how did you go about researching for this project? And second, you write fiction. Yet I know that you will go to the ends of the earth when you're researching something, and how serious you are. So how did you research it, and why is that level of research that you do and that I so admire, why is that so important to you to do that kind of research?
Oh, that's a big question,
I know.
actually. It's a big one. I think that with Han van Meegeren in particular, of course, I wanted to go to Amsterdam. I wanted to go to his house. I wanted to see these places. I wanted to go to the Rijksmuseum. I wanted to look at forgeries, all of these things, to just get a sense of what his life would have been like during the war. But the craziest thing is that before I actually went to Amsterdam, wanting to learn about this man and really why he did what he did, I went to a retirement home that had some Holocaust survivors because I like to talk with people who have lived through these things. That's a huge part of my research, oral histories and listening to people who have lived through these times, and there's not very many of them left.
No.
It's very, very few. And they said, there is a man here who lived through the Nazi occupation of Amsterdam. You should go see him. And I said, absolutely, would love to. So I went, made an appointment, went to see him, and he said that he had been hidden along with his Jewish cello teacher, and he was telling about the 2 years of being hidden in Amsterdam, what that was like. And he said, what are you writing about? And I said, well, I'm actually really researching Han van Meegeren, the forger. And he said, well, my father was his accountant.
No way.
I said, yes. I can't believe that was real. But yes, that's exactly who I was after. And that's who so he knew Han van Meegeren. He had been to his house. His father was the executor of his will. He was able to tell me what his personality was like, how tall he was. He was able to tell me the art that was hanging on his walls, all of these different paintings of Salome with the head of John the Baptist and women beheading men and all of these kind of creepy things that were on his walls that really gave me such a sense of the man. And I thought, that is why we go to listen, right?
It
Because
dimensionalizes things. All of a
Yes.
sudden, you can visualize not only the human being, but the surroundings and the atmosphere that the human being is in,
Yes.
and which you do so well to then bring it alive for the readers, so we can feel it and be there as well.
And that's why that level of accuracy, I think, is so important. And you know this from what you write, because I know you do the same thing that I do. It's so interesting that we found each other because we do so many of the same things. But when you take these real things, not just what you imagine a time to be, but when you discover what that time was really like, it allows the reader to immerse. It allows the reader to immerse and believe. And when you immerse inside that story and you believe what you're reading, then you create a level of empathy that just learning facts cannot create. And when you feel those things, that's when you're never going to forget a story.
Well, and you do it so well, Sharon. You did it in The Light in Hidden Places. You did it in Bluebird. A statistic becomes a human being.
It moves from concept to concrete.
Exactly.
That's exactly what happens.
Yeah. We see often this intersection between art and war. Art, whether that's fine art or music or poetry or literature. Why do we see this intersection often in history, do you think, between, art and war?
I want to hear your answer to this as well, but here's my answer. I think we particularly see this with books about World War II and the Holocaust because it is such a trauma. And I do think that art and creativity, whether you're talking about painted art or written words or music or whatever the art is that you're speaking of, I think that is a way that we process trauma. And, we're dealing with subject matter and with the people's personal histories of loss, of experiencing genocide, of experiencing hate. These things are hard to process, and I feel like it's our human urge to reach out for the creative. So to reach out for that art, whether it's the written word or paintings or music, to help us process what is really unprocessable. What is really hard to deal with. It's hard to deal with when you're writing. It's painful, a lot of these things, to hear people's pain and to try to turn, to take that and turn it into story. But I think it's an absolutely necessary process. I think it's what we have to do. And it's another way that we can learn that empathy that we were talking about earlier, that I think story brings, moving fiction from a concept to something that's concrete, to something that we feel. And I think that we see that a lot whenever we're dealing with something that's huge, like loss.
I agree. In researching my novels, I've found that victims of oppression, their voice has been stolen, but they find a way to speak. And they do that through art and music and dance, and that becomes their voice. And sometimes they're actually communicating through that art form. The dance actually has coded messages, or the art, as you know, is transferring something. So I think, in addition to what you said, art as a voice, and that's maybe why we see that intersection of art and war.
I think it's also art as a healing process. That's what I see as well. And one of the things that I really wanted to say when I was writing Artifice is I wanted to talk about what we do with anger. When we suffer this kind of loss, and when we have a world that is just taken from us so unfairly, what do we do with that anger? And I think one of the things that we can do with that is part of the healing process, is seeking that beauty, seeking that art. And it doesn't mean that the art has to be beautiful, because sometimes art is disturbing, and it's supposed to be that. It's supposed to make us feel. But I think part of that healing process can be seeking beauty and creating our own beauty and creating a world where we live inside that beauty for ourselves, where we build it and we rebuild it. And I think it's a huge part of how we can rebuild our own world after suffering these things. And so maybe that's why we do see so much art intersecting with war.
But you've made it so high stakes. It is so high stakes. I want readers to read Artifice and ask themselves, could I do this? Would I do this? That's what I was doing, is I was reading the book, and I felt like I was on the edge of my seat. Oh my goodness. The courage that it takes is just
well, and don't you think that's what historical fiction should actually be doing, right? You know, we talk about historical fiction as these stories of the past, and you write, you know, hidden histories, and I go delving for those things too, and we're dealing with things that have happened. But the point of these stories is not just something that happened before. It's because it's really all about now, right? These are stories about today and what we're supposed to be doing today. We can look at these decisions that have been made before, and then we can be challenged. What am I capable of doing right now today? Can I do it or can't I?
And I see this as an opportunity for writers like us, who can take an underrepresented part of history that might not have a chance to be the spotlight in a history course, but bring that out of the dark in a way that might encourage readers to research, and which is exactly what you've done with ARTIFICE. I had no idea about this part of history, the people who were involved, the people who were impacted, which means so much because, you know, we often talk about this, that we know the villains' names because we teach the villains' names, but we don't know the victims' names. And in this
case, the heroes. So often we don't know the heroes. And I think that history is full of heroes whose names we will never know. But we can take these stories and we can bring them to life again today and use them. We can be challenged by them. With the light in hidden places, that is something that I wanted to write because first, you know what? I thought I wanted to write a book about this woman who is my hero, Stefania Podgorska. I thought that's what I wanted to write. I wanted everyone to know the incredible sacrifice and bravery that she exhibited at 16 years old, hiding 13 Jews in her attic. I don't know how she was able to do what she was able to do, but when I researched that story, I realized that what I really wanted was for everyone to feel her story because it was a challenge for today. The hate that created the Holocaust did not die with Hitler. We know that it is alive and well in our world today, and so we have to be challenged by that. We have to use these stories, we have to use these decisions that have been made before, look at those and say, what can I do right now? Here's what she did. What can I do today to stand up to hate? What decision can I make in my life today? And I think those decisions are life changers. They're world changers.
So Sharon, something happened recently that just delighted me. I was at the National Book Festival in Washington, D.C., and a reader came up to the signing table and said, I have a reading recommendation for you. I said, yes, please. And this reader said, have you ever heard of the author Sharon Cameron? And I nearly jumped out of my seat and I said, yes, of course. I said, you know, she's been my writing partner for nearly 20 years. And the look on the reader's face, it was priceless. And she said, wait, you know each other? I said, yes, we know each other. We work together.
So almost on the same weekend, the same thing happened to me because I was also at a conference, independent booksellers, and I was doing an event, and one of the booksellers said, you know, your books remind me so much of Ruta Sepetys. I wish I could hear the two of you talk. And I thought, oh wow, just come over and you can hear us talk, you know. So it's funny that it actually gave me the idea that we should talk, and we should talk more about our writing partnership and how we work together to create books. So do you remember the day we met?
I do. We had both joined SCBWI, the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And after the conference, there was some chatter about critique groups and how important it was to have a critique partner. And the word came out, and I responded to an email. Long story short, we met for the first time at then what was Borders
That's right.
bookstore.
That's
and
right.
I remember looking across that, I think you were in the cafe, and I said, I bet that's Sharon. I bet that's Sharon.
And it's so funny because actually I saw you before that. you didn't see me, but I saw you
Hanging out in the parking lot?
No, at the conference. You were getting your very first critique because we were both writing our very first novels, and I had been writing for all of about 4 months. And how long had you been writing? About that same amount of time. And I actually heard a tiny bit of your critique in the other room and saw you come out of the room. And when we started talking in our newly formed critique group, I was like, oh, it's you. It's you.
And who would have known that we would have the same level of interest in history, the same quirky curiosity, the same penchant for research and very immersive research.
I know.
I will never forget that. So people ask me often, what is the benefit of having a critique partner and how does it work?
Yes, well, we laugh.
I know.
How does this work, actually? We have had the same critique group since we started. What year was that? Was it 2004?
2004 or 5, yeah.
Yeah, somewhere right around in there. So we're coming up on the 20-year mark of our writing partnership. And, I think for me, the way it has worked, I don't know how it should work, but the way it has worked, for you and me is that basically we have been there for each other for every step of our development. And we have done a lot of developing. When you were writing Quirky Middle Grade, I was writing a family story. Yes. And then that kind of switched around, and now
what happened to those first novels?
They're in the drawer, right?
They're in the drawer.
They're in
Our
the drawer.
first novels.
I know.
Never saw the light of day.
Both of them. But we worked so hard on them. And we worked on them together. And what I really found for me is that the advantage for me of reading your work and the rest of the work that came through our critique group is that it really taught me how to write. I thought the advantage was
I don't know about that.
Oh no, it's totally true. I thought the advantage was going to be you guys reading my work, but it was reading yours. And it was reading your work like a writer and thinking, maybe this doesn't work for me, maybe this does. And then going back and looking at my own writing and going, oh, I was doing the same thing that I just told Ruta didn't work. And, it broadens that perspective, right?
It does, because I think we see and feel our work and our subjects from the inside out, but having someone look at them from the outside in.
Yes.
And I'm amazed when I get some of your critiques back, and some are things I wouldn't have thought of that, of course, then I want to implement within the book. But then some I think, oh, of course not. This is a story that's fully formed in my heart and my mind. So I'm not expressing it. I'm not putting it on the page.
Right.
And you're there to tell me.
Right.
You're not landing the plane, Sepetys. You're not, we're not feeling it. I want to feel this.
And in our critique group, we will say that too.
Right.
you will say, I have no idea what you're talking about, Sharon. And I'll say, Ruta, this is too much things. And, and so I think part of the way it has worked is that while we have this incredibly supportive writing relationship that is also just, one of the dearest friendship of my life, while we have this wonderful relationship, we also have the ability to tell each other like it is, in a safe space.
That has so helped me develop a thick skin. Because remember, we also came through our process of finding an agent. We didn't have an agent then. Getting published, publishing our debut novels and all. And I will never forget being in an elevator with you at a conference. And now it's so second nature to us to discuss our plots. And I don't know if you remember this moment. We're in the elevator and I said, Sharon, I know you're not going to want to hear this. You have to kill him. And you said, oh, Ruta, I really don't want to do that. The man in the elevator. Do you remember the moment I'm talking about?
I do remember this moment.
The man in the elevator started moving up, pushing the button to open the door. And you said, oh, sir, we're writers, and
do you remember when we spent 5 hours on a plane deciding how to kill one of the characters in my book? And she was going to choke on her own lace collar. Yes. I remember that.
And we've had people knock on our door at 3 a.m. at hotels and shut us down.
Absolutely. And how about the epic argument in the Baja Fresh over tortilla soup?
I know.
over
You got
who
your
was
way.
going to live and who was going to
In
die.
my debut novel.
In your
Shades
debut
of
novel,
Grey.
yes,
I
it was. We were
know.
very passionate about this.
I know.
And
You got your way.
I did get my way. But do you remember? I didn't get my way until you got your editorial letter, and then you called me. And do you remember what you said?
No, I was probably pouting or something.
You said, Sharon, you're going to be so smug.
I know.
And I
know.
was so smug because I wanted him to live so much.
I think that difference in our writing and our approach to plot and character development, could that come from our journey as a reader? Because I do believe that a journey of a writer begins with your journey as a reader, right?
I think that's absolutely true because, you know, you absorb these stories and you absorb the storytelling and the way that a story gets told. And absolutely, I think that we were both readers as kids, and we absorbed that storytelling, but then we both followed such different paths of storytelling, right? I was teaching classical piano. You were managing rock bands, exactly alike, you know, just the same. You know, when we met, and
You didn't bail your students out of jail. I was bailing my clients out of jail. But I think that musicality, I believe that rhythm and flow that we were both exposed to, and come to think of it, you know, we both loved Nancy Drew.
We did.
We did. And, you know, I think it comes from, we enjoyed the same books, but we often had very different takes on the same. Don't let someone start us talking about The Giver.
The end of The Giver.
No, I mean.
Yes, that was another epic argument. That might have been in a Panera Bread.
Yes,
we do this in restaurants, apparently. Yes.
Well,
yes.
we've been known.
Yes, because you said The Giver ended happily. And I said, what? They're all dead. And you said, no, they're not.
Yes,
I love it though. I think in some ways this is what makes us great critique partners, because we do have this similar foundation, but then we will take that foundation in such different directions, but it makes both of us better to think about the other direction. And I think it does that every single time. And that's why there's nothing more precious to me than our time together, you know, creating these books.
Well, to have the ability to call someone with this a very obscure piece of history and know that you are going to be just as excited as I am about 9,000 East Prussian refugees on a sinking ship.
That's right.
No wonder I'm not invited to parties, but you will be like, come over.
Come to my party.
Yes, let's talk
absolutely.
about this.
Let's do it. Every time. And, you know, and I think too that I always know that you know when I'm at my best and when I'm not. And I know that I can completely trust you with when I'm not, and that you will help me find that better place. And again, that is part of what makes, you know, this relationship so precious, because you know me so well.
Same.
You knew me when I didn't know my computer would double space on its own. You knew me then, Ruta. You know, so you know how to get me to where I need to be. And I think vice versa.
Definitely vice versa. And also, though, when you have a critique partner and a writing relationship like we have, it's interesting because I mentioned that it helped me develop a thick skin. Can I tell you that still, I wait for your comments with bated breath, as if I'm waiting for, you know, the New York Times to weigh in, because I know that if you say it's not working, this is not working.
Yeah,
that
have
there's a
the same
problem. And I think,
and I have the exact same thing. I wait for your comments, and I get them first, and I come to you first because I know you're going to tell me if I'm not on that right track, you know. And so I think it's interesting too, though. We have so much sameness, but then again, we have so much difference in how we approach a draft, how we approach marketing, and how we approach what you do with the book. You create from such a different place than I create, which actually helps me.
But I think you are an artist, and I think I am a creative worker. You truly, you write and create your work as I believe a true artist would. That it would never occur to you like, oh, I'm going to write this and I'm going to, this is how I'm actually going to market it and sell it.
Yeah.
Because of my experience in the music business, I don't have, I don't know, I don't have that approach. Also, my background
it's a smart way to do it. But it's a smart way to do it, Ruta. It really is like the smartest way to go about it, to have a plan. Like a plan is actually a good thing. And so I learn from you every time to think these things through and to take a break for a minute from doing my artisty thing that I do and say, okay, what does this need to be? Who wants to read it? Where does it sit on the shelf? All of those questions that are actually super important, you always make me ask them. And what would I do without you?
Well, again, I'm a finance major who became a novelist.
I was a pianist who became a novelist.
Right. And here we are.
And here we are. You and I have talked about our possible futures as writers. There's our literary salon plan. That we will go to Europe or East Tennessee or something, and open a literary salon where we will discuss very eclectic and esoteric ideas with other thinkers. We could do that, or we might get on a train and solve mysteries across Europe. What else will we do?
I would like to take a cue from you, what you have done so well, mentoring young writers. You, from the very beginning, have immediately wanted to give back, and you've been part of, the Reese Witherspoon Hello Sunshine lit up, mentorship group, and I would love to, to try to do that, to mentor, and maybe we could do it together. I
think you just illustrated you and me so well. I was saying, let's be like two little Miss Marples and go get in a train and go across Europe, and you said, we could actually help people in a practical way. Together. No, I do. You are talking about something that I really do believe in a lot with mentoring. And I think that was so important for us to meet other authors and be with other authors and learn from their experiences.
The generosity of Richard Peck and Laurie Halse Anderson and these people who helped us, who blurbed our books early on. How can we give back?
Absolutely. And I think that, people who are looking to publish or looking to write or to do these things, publishing tends to be, a goal. It's the goal that they think that's it. But really, honestly, it's all about that journey. And that journey is helped so much by the people that you are with. And, and that's where I think mentoring can be so important to creating, because it's really about creating, which doesn't stop when something gets published.
It's a business as well. See, the artist in the it's a business as well. And do you remember when we were at a conference and someone from the stage, from the podium, a very well-established author said, all of you are pre-published authors, and all you're focusing on is getting that first book out.
Yeah.
And I promise you, that isn't even, that's not the hard, step here, getting that book published. And I remember thinking, no, we want to publish a book.
Yeah.
But they were right.
Yeah.
There's so much more to it.
Yes.
There are, international publishers and touring and editorial relationships and the revolving door of the publishing industry. And when you have a partner and someone to go
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's exactly what I was going to say. When you get to that place and you have somebody that has walked all of those steps from the very, very beginning, from that first critique all the way through. Remember when you went and took a critique for me on my manuscript because I couldn't be there? Yes, you did that for me. Having someone, like that, who is then also moving with you through what can be a very confusing business and where sometimes there aren't a lot of rules. Right. And, you're just having to navigate and re-navigate and re-navigate. Having somebody walk that with you, it's a life changer. It really is. It's a career changer and a life changer.
And I think that's something we could share with other people. And
Yes.
that's something I'd like to do together.
Yes, absolutely. So everybody needs to invite us to go to places together because we'll always say yes if it's the two of us.
Exactly. Book us both together.
And we'll just do this for 2 hours.
No, we'll work with them.
We'll work with them.
For 2 hours.